A wealthy entrepreneur, living a life of extravagant indulgence in a far-off land with his alluring companion, never imagined that the world he had once left behind would transform so completely. Upon his unexpected return to his homeland, he discovered that his former wife, now known as Celia, had evolved into a resilient, self-reliant force of nature, a woman whose inner strength and determination had blossomed in ways he had never fathomed. Their destinies were poised to intertwine once more, setting the stage for an emotional collision neither could have foreseen. Havencrest Manor, formerly known as Westwood Mansion, soared into the skyline as a modern-day citadel of opulence. Its sleek, floor-to-ceiling windows offered uninterrupted views of lush, manicured gardens, while expansive marble floors and a breathtaking chandelier in the double-hilt foyer transformed every ray of sunlight into a dazzling display. The estate, a monument to wealth that most could only dream of, belied the emptiness that echoed within its walls. A profound silence reigned in the corridors, a silence punctuated solely by the steady tick of an antique clock, each tick a reminder of time slipping away. Celia had grown accustomed to this pervasive silence over the years, though there were moments when she longed for its absence. Standing before a full-length mirror in the lavish master bedroom, she meticulously smoothed the delicate fabric of her cream silk gown. In the reflection, a picture of refined elegance and composure stared back at her, yet behind those poised eyes lay an unmistakable void. The diamond necklace gracefully adorning her neck could not mask the subtle dullness that marred her expression. With a slight tremor in her fingers, she adjusted the clasp and stepped back to scrutinize her appearance. A visage befitting the wife of a millionaire, immaculate, dignified, and seemingly untouchable. Downstairs, the familiar sound of the front door thudding shut reverberated through the grand hall, followed by the brisk, measured footsteps of Sebastian, the man who had once been her husband. Celia paused briefly, taking a deep, steadying breath as she braced herself for the impending encounter. Their conversations had gradually turned into a minefield of cautious words and veiled barbs, each syllable chosen with the utmost care to avoid sparking a confrontation. Today, however, Celia had harbored a quiet hope that the day might unfold differently. With measured steps, she descended the sweeping staircase, the soft clicks of her designer heels barely audible against the polished marble. At the bottom of the staircase, she found Sebastian stationed near the entrance, his phone pressed firmly to his ear as he issued crisp directives like a seasoned commander. His jet-black hair was immaculately styled, and the tailored suit he wore accentuated his commanding presence, a presence that had once captivated her completely. "Delay the meeting by 2 hours," he murmured authoritatively into his phone, his tone brooking no argument. After concluding his call with a swift tap on his device, Sebastian turned and met Celia's gaze. For a fleeting instant, a spark of recognition, perhaps even regret, flickered in his eyes before vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "Busy morning," she ventured, her voice a blend of light-heartedness and caution. "Always," he replied, slipping his phone into his pocket with a nonchalant air. "I have meetings scheduled until late tonight." Celia nodded subtly, her fingers idly playing with the hem of her dress. "I was hoping we could have breakfast together. It's been far too long," she added softly. A glance at his gleaming watch confirmed his preoccupation with time as he responded, "I wish I could, but I'm meeting with Veronica to finalize our itinerary." The very mention of the name struck her like an unexpected blow, though she masked her reaction behind a serene composure. Veronica Hart, the enigmatic woman who had seamlessly woven herself into their once public lives, commanded attention with her effortless charm and poise. Though many dismissed her as merely another business associate, Celia was well aware of the unspoken connection between Veronica and Sebastian. Celia had observed the way Sebastian's eyes lingered on Veronica during moments of laughter, how their conversations carried an intimacy that transcended the bounds of professional courtesy. "So, you're still going on that trip?" Celia inquired with careful restraint. Sebastian offered a measured nod, casually adjusting the cuff of his sleeve as he confirmed, "Yes, we leave tomorrow. Europe for a few weeks, then the tropical bliss of the Riviera." It was all dismissed as a necessary venture for networking, yet Celia's heart ached with the unspoken truth that their once thriving relationship had been reduced to transactional meetings and brief encounters. For a moment she allowed herself to reminisce about the days when hope and youthful dreams had defined their union, but that past now felt like a distant memory, a mere whisper against the roaring present, With a composed smile, she forced herself to reply, "That sounds absolutely wonderful. I truly hope it fulfills all your desires." A heavy pause ensued, during which Sebastian's measured response barely masked an awareness of the deeper undercurrents of their conversation. "It will be good for both of us," he finally said, his words carrying the weight of unspoken grievances, a declaration of space, a chasm that had long since grown between them. As Celia lowered her gaze, concealing the tumult of emotions brewing behind her eyes, she resolved internally not to be diminished any further by the man who had inadvertently distanced himself from her. "I'll keep myself occupied," she murmured, her voice imbued with a quiet determination. Sebastian, offering only a curt nod, turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him and restoring the oppressive silence that now cloaked Celia's heart. In the ensuing quiet, she stood motionless, gazing at the void left by his absence before finally exhaling in a resigned manner. Later that evening, in the sanctuary of her study, surrounded by an eclectic collection of books, journals, and half-finished sketches, the soft luminescence of a desk lamp cast gentle shadows over her workspace. Yet despite the warm glow, comfort eluded her. Her fingertips grazed the edge of a photograph depicting a bygone era, a memory of the once joyful moments she had shared with Sebastian. The image, now a relic of a happier time, was quickly set aside as the sound of a gentle knock on the door startled her. Agnes, the devoted housekeeper, entered bearing a tray laden with tea. "I thought you might need this," she offered kindly, placing the tray on the desk with quiet efficiency. "Thank you, Agnes," Celia replied softly, managing a faint smile. After Agnes quietly exited, Celia poured herself a cup, relishing the warmth that seeped into her chilled hands. As her thoughts drifted to a conversation overheard weeks earlier, Sebastian and Veronica sharing laughter in his study, she understood that the time for waiting had irrevocably passed. That evening, as the last rays of sunlight surrendered to the encroaching night, Celia resolved that her life would no longer orbit around the man who had long forgotten how to truly see her. Determined to redefine her existence, she retrieved a well-worn notebook and began to write. With each word penned, she envisioned a future crafted by her own ambitions. A future brimming with charitable endeavors, innovative business ventures, and a legacy that would bear her name, independent of Sebastian's influence. As the night deepened and the first hints of dawn emerged, Celia felt a rare sense of empowerment. Finally, she was the architect of her own destiny. The following morning, as Sebastian meticulously packed his designer luggage, Celia observed him from a discreet corner of the doorway. He was absorbed in selecting the perfect tie, oblivious to her presence, a silent observer to the man who had once captivated her heart. "I hope you have a wonderful trip," she murmured softly, causing him to pause for a fleeting moment. He offered a polite smile, his voice perfunctory as he replied, "Thanks, I'll be in touch." And with that he wheeled his suitcase away, leaving Celia to confront the echo of his departing footsteps. The door closed behind him, and in that solemn silence, she embraced her new beginning. As the intricate tapestry of their lives unfolded, each step they took seemed to redefine their identities, their pasts and futures interlaced with bittersweet memories and uncertain promises. And now, dear reader, I pose the question. If you were in their shoes, would you dare to hope for a second chance, or would you have long since walked away? Do share your reflections in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Sebastian's thoughts raced back to Celia, the woman he had once vowed eternal devotion to, the one he abandoned without a second thought. Now, as he floated above the world in his sleek private jet, that memory stung with a bitter clarity. Since boarding, not a single call had bridged the distance between him and the life he'd left behind. The guilt, sharp and relentless, now gnawed at him as he finally murmured, "I need time to think," withdrawing his hand as if severing an unspoken tie. For a fleeting moment, Veronica's radiant smile faltered, but she quickly masked her disappointment with a delicate sip of champagne. "Of course I understand," she replied, her voice light yet carrying a weight that neither could ignore. The tension between them simmered, a silent testament to the diverging paths they now trod. Later that night, within the confines of their sumptuous suite at the Rosemont estate, Sebastian found himself alone on the balcony. He stared out at the moonlit sea, where the ceaseless rhythm of the waves mocked the turbulence raging within him. Their steady cadence seemed indifferent to the chaos of his own heart. Back at the estate, Celia was far from idle. Over the past several days, she had immersed herself in finalizing plans for an ambitious new project, an initiative designed to provide scholarships to underprivileged students. Her desk, cluttered with documents, proposals, and contact lists, became a welcome refuge amid the disarray of her personal life. Though Sebastian's calls had long since ceased, she had come to accept his absence as inevitable. Instead of wallowing in despair, she redirected her energy toward creating something lasting, something that would outshine the empty promises of their fractured marriage. One late evening, as Celia pored over a detailed financial report, her phone vibrated with an incoming message. It was from her longtime mentor, Margot Grant, a woman whose wisdom had helped Celia see beyond her role as a mere accessory to another man's success. The message read, "You're doing great things, Celia. Don't stop now." A soft smile illuminated her face. Margot's words were like a revitalizing spark to her weary soul. With renewed determination, Celia embraced her role as the architect of her own future. Meanwhile, halfway across the globe in Monaco, the rift between Sebastian and Veronica continued to widen. What had begun as a lavish escape had failed to ignite the spark of purpose in him. One serene morning, as they lounged by an opulent pool under the Mediterranean sun, Veronica, absorbed in scrolling through her phone, finally broke the silence. "You're barely present," she remarked without looking up, her tone carrying a hint of reproach. "It's as if your mind is adrift," she added, prompting Sebastian to rub the back of his neck in silent acknowledgement. "Maybe it is," he admitted, the confession hanging heavily between them. Veronica's eyes narrowed in disbelief. "Is it her?" she demanded sharply, the question laced with a mix of hurt and indignation. Sebastian's silence was damning enough. Unable to contain her frustration any longer, Veronica abruptly stood, the chair scraping harshly against the stone floor. "You're a fool, Sebastian," she spat. "You have everything right here, and you're throwing it all away." With that, she stormed off, leaving him alone by the pool, the warmth of the sun doing little to thaw the chill that had settled deep within him. As the trip progressed, the opulence around him, the fine dining, exotic locations, and endless social events began to lose its luster. Sebastian came to a stark realization. No luxury could fill the void inside him, a void carved out by a life of choices made in haste. Perhaps Celia had been right all along. It wasn't about the wealth, the enticing mistress, or the fleeting glamour. It was about discovering something real and substantial. For the first time, he wondered if redemption might still be within reach. Back in her own realm of transformation, the mid-afternoon sun streamed through the expansive windows of Celia's private home office, casting golden rays that danced across polished surfaces. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted gently from a porcelain cup that had yet to be touched. Celia's fingers hovered above the laptop keyboard, her eyes scanning the latest proposal for the scholarship program, a project that had evolved into a symbol of her rebirth. This venture was more than just a distraction. It was the embodiment of her newfound purpose. A gentle knock at the door interrupted her reverie. Agnes, the ever-dependable housekeeper, peeked in with a knowing smile. "There's someone here to see you, Mrs. Sebastian," she announced softly. Surprised, Celia replied, "I wasn't expecting anyone." With a subtle nod, Agnes ushered in a distinguished older woman. It was none other than Margot Grant, whose timeless elegance and sage advice had always provided comfort in times of uncertainty. "I didn't think I'd see you until the board meeting next week," Celia said, rising to envelop Margot in a warm embrace. "I had some free time and thought I'd drop by," Margot responded gracefully as she settled into a comfortable chair. "Besides, I know how absorbed you become when you're on the brink of something big." Celia's smile was gentle yet tinged with sorrow, a reflection of battles fought silently within. After a thoughtful pause, Margot inquired, "How are you really?" The question, laden with empathy, cut through the pretense of busy work. Celia traced the rim of her coffee cup, her voice soft yet earnest. "I'm managing. Some days are harder than others." Margot's eyes reflected a deep understanding as she observed Celia's vulnerability. "Managing isn't the same as thriving, dear," she said quietly. "I know," Celia sighed, "but I'm getting there. This project, it's given me purpose. I feel like I'm finally building something that is truly mine." Margot nodded approvingly, then shared some promising news. A consortium of key donors had expressed interest in expanding the scholarship initiative. "If you're ready, you could take the helm of this expansion personally," she proposed, her tone both encouraging and challenging. The offer, heavy with both promise and risk, hung in the air. Expanding the program meant stepping further into the spotlight, a realm Celia had long avoided while tethered to Sebastian's ambitions. Yet the thought of standing alone, recognized for her own achievements, kindled a spark of determination within her. "I'd love to," she whispered, her voice growing steadier with resolve. For the next hour, they discussed logistics, potential partnerships, and strategies to present the project to the board. By the time Margot departed, Celia felt reinvigorated, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. As dusk settled over the city, Celia stepped out onto the terrace. The cool breeze caressed her skin, carrying with it memories of nights spent dreaming about a shared future, a future now irretrievably lost. A sudden buzz from her phone distracted her. A message from an unknown number simply read, "This is only the beginning. Don't let anyone hold you back." A small, determined smile crept onto her face as she secured her phone and leaned against the railing, the prospect of a new dawn no longer daunting. Across the Atlantic, in a sumptuous hotel bar in Rome, Sebastian sat at the counter, nursing his second glass of bourbon. The room buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses, yet all the noise blurred into an indistinct murmur. Beside him, Veronica scrolled through her phone with a bored expression. "You're quiet tonight," she remarked casually, not lifting her gaze. "I'm thinking," he replied, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Veronica sighed dramatically, setting her phone aside. "You've been doing that a lot lately. What's on your mind?" He hesitated before answering. "Nothing specific." Veronica arched an eyebrow, a smirk playing on her lips. "Is it her?" she asked, the question hanging between them, laden with implications. His silence was an admission more powerful than words. Sebastian drained the last of his bourbon and set the glass down with more force than necessary. "It's not that simple," he murmured, his voice heavy with regret. Veronica rolled her eyes, gathering her purse as she departed. "Whatever you say," she retorted. Left alone, Sebastian felt the oppressive weight of his decisions. The luxury, the endless distractions, and the hollow chase for more had all proven to be mere illusions, unable to mask the emptiness within. As he lay in the king-sized bed that night, staring at an ornate ceiling, his mind wandered back to Celia. The way her eyes lit up when she spoke of her passions, the unwavering support she had once offered him even when unworthy. Unbeknownst to him, Celia too was wide awake, fervently mapping out the next phase of her project. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, determined to reclaim everything that had been lost. Pausing only to glance at an old photograph of happier times, when their smiles were genuine, she gently turned it face down and returned to her work. The road ahead was long, but she was no longer merely rebuilding her life. She was transforming it entirely. By dawn, Sebastian found himself on a hotel balcony, watching as the city stirred to life beneath him. He sipped his coffee, its bitterness a stark counterpoint to the morning's soft warmth, while notifications on his phone remained unchecked. When Veronica finally emerged, still wrapped in a silken robe and exuding a mix of irritation and indifference, she remarked, "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," he mumbled, without meeting her gaze. In the ensuing silence, Sebastian recognized that the thrill he once found in Veronica had faded. She was never what he truly needed. With the rising sun as his silent witness, he resolved that he could no longer run from Celia or from himself. The decision was clear. It was time to go home. As a sleek black sedan crunched its way up the gravel driveway of the Rosemont estate, Sebastian sat quietly in the back seat, tapping his fingers against the leather armrest while lost in thought. The estate looked exactly as he remembered, grand, stately, and immaculate, yet now it carried the weight of all that had been lost. With each passing moment, the journey home promised not just a return to what once was, but the possibility of reclaiming a future he had long forsaken. Sebastian's sleek black sedan ground to a halt in front of Sebastian Manor, and an unsettling sensation crept over him like an uninvited shadow. As he sat silently, a gnawing discomfort churned in the pit of his stomach, hinting at a change he couldn't quite define. The driver opened the door, and Sebastian stepped out, tugging his tailored suit jacket tighter against the cool autumn breeze that rustled the vibrant, freshly painted trees lining the driveway. Taking a deep, steadying breath, he tried to calm his nerves with the crisp air, but it only served to amplify his inner unease. Before he could reach the grand entrance, the heavy oak front door swung open. Agnes, the devoted and discreet housekeeper of Sebastian Manor, greeted him with a warm yet guarded smile. "Welcome home, Mr. Sebastian," she said politely. "Thanks, Agnes," he replied, his eyes briefly flickering past her into the vast foyer. The space was serene, its silence punctuated only by the faint strains of piano music that drifted from a distant room. Agnes continued, "Celia is in the sunroom," as she stepped aside to let him enter. Sebastian nodded, silently acknowledging that his return had been noted and that she would inform Celia of his arrival. The familiar corridors, with their exquisite new touches, seemed to pulse with a subtle energy that felt both alien and familiar. Although the walls were still adorned with tasteful, carefully chosen artworks, and the sweeping grand staircase still beckoned upward, the ambiance was unmistakably transformed, as if the manor had been curated anew during his absence. Setting down his luggage near the base of the staircase, Sebastian followed the gentle melody of the piano through a series of newly decorated hallways. Small, deliberate changes caught his eye: fresh floral arrangements placed with meticulous care, a modern sculpture in a quiet corner that hadn't been there before, and even a series of artfully bound books that now lined a previously barren shelf. Each new detail spoke of a thoughtful presence, one that had imbued the home with a renewed sense of purpose and individuality. When he finally reached the sunroom, he paused at the threshold, his breath momentarily catching in his throat. There, bathed in the soft glow of late afternoon light, sat Celia at a grand piano. Her delicate fingers moved over the keys with effortless grace, coaxing a soft, melancholy tune that resonated deeply within the room. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, her hair cascading in gentle waves over her shoulders, and an aura of serene composure enveloped her. It was as though, in his absence, she had discovered a tranquility that both comforted and pained him. At the sound of his presence, Celia slowly brought her fingers to rest and turned to face him. Her steady gaze was different from the uncertainty he remembered. It was calm and resolute, as if it had been refined by solitude and self-discovery. "You're back," she stated quietly, her voice carrying both acceptance and a hint of restrained sorrow. "I am," he replied, stepping further into the room with measured care. "I didn't want to startle you." A faint smile tugged at her lips, though it did little to soften the guarded lines of her expression. "It's fine. I've had plenty of time to adjust to surprises," she said, and the words lingered heavily between them. Sebastian's eyes wandered around the sunroom, noting the delicate changes. A collection of new books on a polished shelf, a vase of fresh lilies on a side table, that all spoke of Celia's evolving influence over her sanctuary. "You've been busy," he commented, gesturing toward the room. "I have," she replied, folding her hands gently in her lap. "I decided to make some changes while you were away." Sebastian nodded slowly, still absorbing the shift in the atmosphere. "It suits you," he murmured, though an awkward silence soon enveloped them. Celia then moved gracefully toward the window that overlooked the sprawling, manicured garden. "How was your trip?" she asked, her tone casual yet laced with an undercurrent of wistfulness. Standing beside her and following her gaze toward the horizon, Sebastian replied, "Long." He hesitated, then added, "It wasn't what I expected. Things rarely are." Her eyes remained fixed on the lush greenery, yet it was clear that her mind dwelled on memories and unspoken truths. After a moment of contemplative silence, she finally turned to him and inquired, "Did you find what you were looking for?" Sebastian's answer came hesitantly. "No. I thought I needed to get away, to figure things out, but the further I got, the more lost I felt." Her expression softened with a mix of empathy and caution as she listened. "And now you're back?" she pressed gently. "Yes," he confessed, stepping closer. "I've come to realize that what I was searching for wasn't out there, it was here, with you." Her breath caught for a heartbeat before she stepped back slightly, her voice trembling with guarded resolve. "Sebastian, you can't expect things to revert to what they once were," she murmured. "I know," he said earnestly. "I don't expect perfection or forgiveness overnight. I just need you to know that I see things differently now." Celia's eyes searched his face, seeking sincerity amid the vulnerability. "You left when I needed you most," she said quietly, the admission carrying the weight of past hurts. "I know," he whispered, guilt heavy in his tone. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up if you'll let me." A long silence fell, filled only by the soft rustling of leaves outside. Then Celia turned, returning to the piano as if drawn by its comforting familiarity. Her fingertips grazed the polished surface, and she spoke softly. "I've built a life for myself in your absence. I'm not sure there's room for you in it anymore." The words cut deeply, but Sebastian's resolve did not waver. "Then allow me the chance to earn that space. Let me prove that I can be the man you deserve," he pleaded. Celia exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing ever so slightly. "It's not just about you changing, Sebastian," she replied, her voice a mix of vulnerability and defiance. "It's about whether I can open my heart again." His voice softened, laden with earnest determination. "Then tell me what you need, and I will do it." For the first time since his return, Celia allowed a flicker of vulnerability. A single tear escaped her eyes before she hastily wiped it away. "I need time," he nodded, accepting the fragile gift of possibility. "I can give you that." In the quiet that followed, the soft chime of a clock marked the slow passage of time as both lost themselves in thought. Eventually, Celia rose and walked toward the door. Pausing before she left, she turned to him one last time, her voice firm yet wistful. "Don't make promises you can't keep, Sebastian." As she disappeared down the corridor, he remained in the sunroom, his gaze fixed on the lively garden outside. He knew that the road to redemption would be arduous, yet for the first time he felt ready to embrace the challenge, each step forward a testament to his determination to reclaim what he had lost. The next morning, soft sunlight filtered through the delicate lace curtains of Sebastian Manor, casting intricate patterns on the polished wooden floor. In the spacious breakfast room, Sebastian sat alone, the gentle hum of the coffee machine mingling with the rhythmic tapping of his fingers on the marble tabletop. Although a week had passed since his return, the emotional chasm between him and Celia remained palpable. She interacted with him politely and with measured civility, but the guarded distance in her demeanor was unmistakable. Each conversation felt like treading water in a sea of unresolved emotions. As he sipped his coffee, a nagging thought invaded his mind. Was she waiting for him to falter, to give up and leave once more? Yet deep within he knew he was no longer the man who had once taken her presence for granted. His introspection was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Agnes appeared in the doorway, carrying a neatly stacked pile of mail. "Morning post," she said softly as she set the envelopes on the table, then excused herself with a gentle nod. Curiosity got the better of him as he absent-mindedly flipped through the envelopes. Bills, invitations, and various advertisements, until one particular letter caught his eye. It was addressed to Celia in elegant, flowing handwriting with a return address from an old Boston law firm that harked back to their earlier years together. Intrigued, yet respectful of her privacy, he set the letter aside without opening it. Just then, Celia entered the room, her composure as impeccable as ever. Wearing a simple cream blouse paired with tailored trousers and a loose bun, she moved with an air of dignified assurance. "Good morning," she greeted softly, pausing briefly by the counter to pour herself a cup of tea. Sebastian managed a quiet morning, Celia, his eyes noting the letter as it rested on the table. For a moment her gaze flickered with recognition as she reached for the envelope. "Something important?" he asked, striving for casualness. Without answering immediately, she ran her thumb along its edge, deliberating silently whether to share its contents. Finally, she sat down and carefully opened it. Her eyes scanned the letter, her face a mask of calm, yet Sebastian noticed the tension in her clenched fingers. "Everything okay?" he pressed softly. "Yes, it's just some paperwork regarding an inheritance," she answered, taking a measured sip of tea. "My great-aunt Lena passed away a few months ago, leaving me a substantial portion of her estate." Sebastian's brow furrowed at the mention of a substantial portion, yet he maintained a neutral expression. "That's unexpected," he murmured. "It is," Celia agreed quietly, her tone reflecting both resignation and a newfound strength. She had always been private about her finances, and this revelation hinted at a shifting balance in their long-established roles. As Celia excused herself, leaving Sebastian alone with the weight of this new development, he sank into his leather chair and stared blankly at the pile of unopened mail. In that moment, he understood that the very foundation of their relationship had changed. She was no longer merely the supporter of his success. She had become a formidable force in her own right. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted when the sound of footsteps signaled another visitor. Veronica Hart, with a self-assured smile and arms folded, appeared in the doorway of his office. "You don't look happy to see me," she teased, her tone laced with playful irony as she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Sebastian's office felt smaller than he remembered as Veronica casually dropped in, her presence as bold and unannounced as a summer storm. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd check in," she said, settling herself casually on the edge of his mahogany desk. Her tone was light, yet there was an unmistakable undercurrent of provocation. "But judging by the look on your face, I'd say something's got you rattled." Her eyes sparkled with mischief as she twirled a strand of auburn hair around her finger, watching him struggle to form a response. The silence that followed was heavy enough for her to press on. "Let me guess," she teased, a smirk tugging at her lips. "It has something to do with Celia, doesn't it?" Sebastian's jaw tightened at her insinuation. "Veronica, I'm not in the mood for games," he snapped, a bitter smirk crossing his face as he tried to mask his inner turmoil. Yet even as he spoke, her words reverberated in the stillness of the room, each syllable a reminder of his past failures. "You know, I warned you about this," she continued, her voice laced with both condescension and concern. "You thought she'd be sitting here, waiting for you to come back, but she's outgrown you, Sebastian, and now she's got the money to prove it." The words struck him like a physical blow, sending him into a brief moment of panic. Unable to stand the sting, he abruptly rose from his chair and paced over to the window, seeking solace in the view of the meticulously maintained garden below. The lush greenery outside offered little comfort as Sebastian tried to collect his thoughts. "I'm not going to lose her," he declared firmly, though his voice wavered slightly under the weight of his inner conflict. Veronica's laughter, low and bitter, echoed off the sterile walls of his office. "She doesn't need you anymore, that's the difference," she retorted, her tone both mocking and dismissive. Turning to face her with clenched jaws and determined eyes, Sebastian responded, "Maybe she doesn't need me, but that doesn't mean I'm giving up." Veronica rolled her eyes, sliding off the desk with a casual grace. "You always were stubborn, but be careful, Sebastian. She's not the woman you remember. You might not like what you find." With that, she swept out of the office, leaving him alone with the echo of her parting words. Left to his thoughts, Sebastian sank back into his leather chair, replaying every harsh word in his mind. He knew, perhaps more deeply than he cared to admit, that Celia had changed beyond recognition. Their shared history, once a fortress of comfort and familiarity, now seemed like a fragile relic, incapable of bridging the gap that had formed between them. The realization was a bitter pill. If he wanted to reclaim her trust, he would have to prove that he was worthy of the life she was diligently building for herself. That evening, Celia attended a prestigious charity gala in downtown Newbridge, an event she had once dreaded but now embraced with an unmistakable air of confidence. In the elegant ballroom, Celia navigated the throng of influential figures and dignitaries with effortless grace. Gone was the timid Mrs. Westwood of old. Tonight she was a formidable force in her own right. Clad in an emerald evening gown that accentuated her every curve and shimmered under the opulent chandelier light, she mingled with business moguls and philanthropists, sharing her passionate vision for a groundbreaking scholarship program. Each conversation, each handshake, imbued her with a sense of belonging and purpose that had been missing for so long. As the gala wound down, Celia stepped out into the cool night air, where she found her driver waiting just outside. Before she could reach the sleek car, a familiar voice called her name. She turned to see Sebastian approaching, his tie loosened in a gesture of vulnerability and determination. "Can we talk?" he asked, slightly out of breath from hurrying over. His presence, unexpected and tentative, startled her. "Sebastian, what are you doing here?" she inquired, her tone a mixture of surprise and guarded caution. "I needed to see you," he said quietly, stepping closer until there was little space between them. "I know about the inheritance," he added, his admission hanging in the cool night air. Celia's expression hardened for an instant, the mention of the newfound wealth stirring conflicting emotions. "And I want you to know that this doesn't change how I feel," he continued earnestly. "I'm not here because of the money. I'm here because I still believe in us." For a long moment, Celia studied him, searching his eyes for any sign of insincerity. "This changes everything, Sebastian," she murmured softly, the words laden with both hope and pain. "You need to understand that." "I do," he insisted, his voice steady despite the turbulence within. "But I also know that money isn't what defines us. It's what we do with it that matters." Her lips parted as if to speak, but she hesitated, struck by the sincerity in his tone. For the first time in what felt like ages, she glimpsed the man she had once loved. The man who was willing to lay his pride bare in the hope of redemption. "I don't know if I can trust you yet," she admitted, at last. "Then let me earn it," he replied softly, his gaze unwavering as the city lights twinkled in the distance. The air between them was thick with unspoken promises and fragile possibilities, each heartbeat a tentative step toward reconciliation. Inside the Grand Crest Hotel's opulent ballroom, the gala continued to pulse with life. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, scattering golden light across a sea of elegantly dressed guests. The atmosphere was a heady blend of ambition and refined celebration, a stark contrast to the internal struggle unfolding just beyond its polished walls. Later that evening, as Celia stood by the expansive balcony doors, the cool breeze whispered promises of renewal. The distant murmur of the gala was a comforting backdrop as she closed her eyes to savor a moment of peace. Yet her solitude was abruptly interrupted by the soft sound of Sebastian's voice. She turned slowly to see him standing a few feet away, his expression a delicate mix of hesitation and earnest determination. "You're doing well," he said, his voice gentle and laden with admiration. "Thank you," she replied, her tone polite yet tinged with distance. "I meant it," he added, stepping closer once more, his words earnest and sincere. "Seeing you like this, it's incredible." Celia searched his eyes, seeking a hint of ulterior motive. "Why are you here, Sebastian, really?" she asked, her voice trembling with a blend of hope and trepidation. "Because I wanted to see you, and because I needed to tell you that I'm proud of you," he confessed, the sincerity of his words catching her off guard. "You don't need to say things to make me feel better." "I'm not," he interrupted firmly. "I'm saying it because it's true. I know I hurt you, and I know I left you when you needed me most. I can't undo the past, but I want to build a future with you, on your terms." Her breath hitched at his admission, yet Celia turned away, gripping the cool railing as the night breeze caressed her face. "Do you know what the hardest part has been?" she whispered, her voice nearly lost in the soft rustle of the wind. "What?" he asked, stepping closer, his gaze fixed on her trembling form. "Letting go of the version of you I used to love, the man who made me believe we were building something together," she murmured, tears threatening to spill. "But that man left, Celia," he replied, his voice thick with remorse. "I hate that I made you feel abandoned. But I'm still here, and I want to be part of your life again." In that fragile moment, the man before her was not the one who had walked away. He was humbled, vulnerable, and desperate to make amends. Yet, before she could respond further, a polite call from inside the ballroom drew her back into the world of glittering society. "I have to go," she said softly, stepping away. "Not tonight," Sebastian pleaded, but she only shook her head. Left alone on the balcony, Sebastian watched as Celia disappeared into the throng of guests. The cool night air wrapped around him like a bittersweet reminder of the distance that still lay between them. Even as he vowed not to give up, he knew that the shift in power was undeniable. Celia now held all the cards. Still, he resolved to fight for her, one careful step at a time. Sebastian knew it would take more than promises. It would take action, and he was determined to prove himself. Outside, heavy clouds loomed over the city, draping a somber gray hue across Sebastian Estate. Rain tapped softly against the expansive glass windows, its rhythmic patter contrasting with the storm of emotions raging within him. Inside, in the quiet of the kitchen, Celia stood motionless, her fingers clenched around the cool marble countertop as she gazed into her steaming cup of tea. The delicate tendrils of steam curled upward slowly, yet she made no move to sip. Since dawn, an oppressive weight had pressed upon her chest, leaving her restless and unable to sleep. The vivid memories of last night's encounter with Sebastian at the Gala replayed in her mind like a broken record. His raw, honest words had stirred deep emotions within her, feelings she had long buried beneath layers of independence and lingering resentment. Still, she wasn't ready to confront those buried emotions just yet. As if summoned by fate, footsteps echoed softly in the hallway until Sebastian appeared in the doorway. His shirt sleeves were casually rolled up and his tie hung loosely around his neck, lending him a slightly disheveled appearance that was striking against the backdrop of the impeccably organized kitchen. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the gentle patter of rain and the steady ticking of the wall clock broke the silence. Finally, with a tentative softness, Sebastian said, "Morning." "Morning," Celia replied in a voice barely above a whisper, her eyes remaining fixed on the swirling tea. Sebastian moved toward the coffee machine, poured himself a cup, and leaned against the counter across from her. His gaze lingered on her fragile profile, searching for an opening to bridge the gulf between them. After a few weighted moments, he confessed, "I couldn't sleep last night. I kept thinking about what you said." The admission sent a shiver through the air, and Celia's fingers tightened around her porcelain cup. "Sebastian, I don't want to have this conversation right now," she murmured, her tone trembling with a mixture of pain and fatigue. "We need to," he interjected, gently but firmly. "You've been avoiding me since I came back, and I understand that, but we can't keep dancing around this." At those words, Celia lifted her eyes, meeting his with a gaze that was both guarded and wistful. His once arrogant green eyes now brimmed with a rare vulnerability that disarmed her momentarily, though she quickly retreated behind her emotional defenses. "What do you want me to say?" she asked, her voice edged with bitterness. "The truth," Sebastian replied, stepping closer, his tone earnest. "Tell me how you really feel." Her breath hitched as she turned toward the window, where rain now cascaded down the glass like a string of sorrowful tears. "You left, Sebastian," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You left me here to pick up the pieces, and now you're back, expecting me to just forget?" "I'm not asking you to forget," he said, his voice wavering slightly with regret. "I'm asking you to give me a chance to make things right." A bitter laugh escaped her lips as she shook her head slowly. "You don't get it, do you? I spent years supporting you, believing in your dreams, thinking that one day you'd make room for mine. But when things got hard, you left. I had to rebuild myself without you." As if in that moment my tongue had withdrawn, I held open the door to the ballroom without you. Sebastian closed the distance between them, his eyes filled with sorrow and determination. "I know I failed you," he admitted, his voice thick with remorse. "I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But Celia, you've changed. You're an incredible, powerful woman now, and I admire you more than ever." His words were heavy with sincerity as he added, "I want to be part of your life again, not because I need you, but because I respect you." For a moment, tears welled in Celia's eyes, though she fought hard to keep them at bay. "Respect wasn't enough before," she said, her tone faltering as she tried to steady herself. "Why should it be enough now?" "Because I'm different," Sebastian insisted, moving even closer until their faces were nearly touching. "I know that doesn't erase what I did, but I promise you, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I can be the man you need." Celia turned to face him fully, her eyes searching his for any hint of deceit. "How do I know this isn't just another promise you'll break?" she asked, her voice trembling with guarded hope. "I can't give you guarantees," he said softly, "but I give you my word, I will do everything in my power not to break it again." The raw vulnerability in his tone cracked something deep inside her, and before she could stop herself, tears began to roll down her cheeks. Sebastian reached out, his thumb tenderly brushing away a tear as it glistened on her cheek. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver down her spine, and for a fleeting moment she leaned into him. "I don't know if I can trust you," she whispered, barely audible over the soft patter of rain. "Then let me earn it," he replied, his hand still resting gently against her skin. "We don't have to rush. We can take it one step at a time." Reluctantly, she pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself as if to hold her shattered heart together. "I need time," she said quietly. "I understand," he replied, stepping back to give her space. "But please, don't shut me out." Just then the sound of the doorbell echoed through the house, slicing through the tension like a sudden gust of wind. Celia quickly wiped away her tears, composing herself with a determined grace. "I should get that," she said, moving toward the front door. Opening it, she found a courier waiting on the porch with a package in hand. After signing for it and offering a brief thank you, she closed the door and carried the package into the living room. Sebastian followed her with curious eyes. "What is it?" he asked. Placing the package carefully on the coffee table, Celia opened it to reveal a stack of legal documents. Her eyes skimmed the top page, and she stiffened slightly. "It's from my attorney," she said evenly. "About the inheritance?" Sebastian inquired. "Yes," she replied, flipping through the pages. "It's the final transfer of assets." The weight of her newfound financial power pressed upon him, and his throat tightened as he watched her with mixed emotions. "You've really built something incredible, haven't you?" he murmured. Celia looked up, her expression unreadable. "Yes, I have." For a long moment silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken words and regrets. Sebastian longed to tell her how proud he was, how deeply he regretted not recognizing her potential sooner, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he sank onto the couch and ran a hand through his hair. "I used to think success was about power and control," he admitted quietly, "but now, seeing you like this, I realize how wrong I was. True success isn't about control, it's about creating something meaningful, something that endures." Celia's gaze softened as she absorbed his words, though she said nothing. Finally, she murmured, "You have hurt me, Sebastian, more than you know." "I know," he whispered, his eyes glistening with remorse, "and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it." Standing up, she wrapped her arms around herself and stared out the rain-washed window. Outside, the storm was beginning to let up, the sky gradually brightening with tentative hope. "I don't know if we'll ever be what we used to be," she said softly. "Maybe we're not meant to be that, but perhaps we can become something new, something stronger." For a long moment, neither spoke as the silence enveloped them once more. Finally, with a quiet resolve, Celia said, "I need time." Her voice, though laced with uncertainty, carried a hint of possibility. Sebastian nodded, understanding that this was the most she could offer at the moment. "I'll wait," he promised softly. As the rain slowed to a gentle drizzle, they stood together in the quiet living room, two souls caught between the pain of the past and the fragile hope of a renewed future. Meanwhile, in the late afternoon, the golden light filtered through the large windows of Sebastian's downtown office, casting long shadows over the oak conference table. The room, once brimming with energy, now felt empty and cold. Sebastian sat at the head of the table, his shirt collar unbuttoned and sleeves rolled up, surrounded by stacks of financial reports that painted a damning picture. His once thriving business was in disarray, with failed investments and disloyal partners shaking the very foundation of his empire. As his assistant Lena reminded him of the upcoming board meeting, he realized that nothing in his life was as secure as he once believed. His phone buzzed with a message from Veronica, an unwelcome reminder of a past he was trying to leave behind. Though her words tempted him to revisit old wounds, he knew that now, more than ever, he needed solutions, not distraction. Across town, in a bright conference room at a non-profit organization, Celia listened intently to updates about her scholarship program. Charts, photographs, and heartfelt testimonials filled the space with a sense of purpose that contrasted sharply with the turmoil in Sebastian's world. The director's voice rang out in the meeting room at Crescent Hall, beaming with pride as he declared, "The response from the community has been incredible." His words resonated deeply with Celia, whose heart swelled with genuine warmth. A soft smile spread across her face as she replied, "That's wonderful to hear. Let's keep building on this momentum." In that moment, she felt that the long hours and tireless effort poured into her scholarship initiative had not been in vain. It was a beacon of hope, a tangible sign that her vision was resonating far beyond her own expectation. As the meeting wrapped up, Celia's phone vibrated discreetly in her bag. She pulled it out and discovered a message from Agnes. The brief note stated, "Sebastian's business is all over the news. Thought you'd want to know." For a second, her fingers hesitated over the screen before she tapped on the link Agnes had included. The article that unfolded was a stark exposé detailing the severe financial troubles at Westwood Enterprises. complete with ominous speculations about whether Sebastian could recover from this downfall. The headline itself, "Westwood Enterprises on the Brink. Can the former Titan rebuild?" struck her with a force that tightened her chest. As she read through the article, memories flooded back of the man she once knew, the confident, determined man who had once seemed invincible in his pursuit of success. Yet, the Sebastian described in the paper was unrecognizable, humbled, desperate, and teetering on the edge of collapse. Celia closed the article slowly and leaned back in her chair, her thoughts caught between genuine concern and a fierce instinct for self-preservation. She had spent countless months building a life of independence, nurturing her dreams and reclaiming her identity apart from him. The idea of being pulled back into the chaos of his life with all its unpredictable turmoil filled her with dread. And yet, a small, persistent part of her, the part that had once loved him so deeply, could not help but wonder if there was still hope. Was Sebastian truly beyond saving? Or did he still possess the inner strength to rise from these ruins? Later that evening, in a modest downtown apartment that now served as his refuge, Sebastian sat alone with a glass of whiskey in hand. The city lights twinkled outside his window, offering little comfort against the weight that pressed heavily on his soul. He had spent the past few hours meticulously poring over strategies, reaching out to old contacts, and desperately attempting to piece together a coherent recovery plan. Yet nothing seemed solid enough to present to the board the following day. In the midst of his internal struggle, his thoughts inevitably drifted to Celia. He wondered, with a pang of uncertainty, whether she had heard about his predicament, and, if she had, whether she still cared at all. Sebastian had been so sure in the past that he could win her back, that his mere return would be enough to restore what once was. But now, with everything falling apart, he began to question if he even deserved her love. The unexpected knock at his apartment door startled him from his reverie. He set his whiskey down, half expecting Lena, his assistant, to deliver more grim news. Instead, when he opened the door, he found himself face to face with Celia. Her presence in the doorway was both startling and oddly comforting. Clad in a navy trench coat with her hair damp from the evening mist, she stood there with a blend of hesitation and determined resolve etched across her face. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. Sebastian stepped aside without a word, closing the door behind her. The air between them was heavy with unspoken emotions as they stood in the dim light of his living room. After a long moment, Celia broke the silence. "I heard about the business," she said, in a gentle, measured tone. Sebastian exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. "I figured you would," he replied, his voice betraying the uncertainty that had plagued him for so long. "I wasn't sure if I should come," Celia admitted, slowly removing her coat and draping it over the back of a chair. "But I couldn't stop thinking about you." Her admission sent a tremor of warmth through him, yet he quickly attempted to contain the rush of hope. "I'm not sure what you're hoping to find here, Celia," he murmured. "I'm not exactly in a good place right now," she confessed, stepping closer until she was within his reach. Her eyes, filled with an earnest vulnerability, searched his face. "I know," he said, sinking onto the couch with his elbows resting on his knees. "That's why I'm here." His voice was barely above a whisper as he continued. "I don't know how to fix this. Everything's falling apart, and I'm at a loss for where to start." Celia paused before sitting beside him, offering a steadying presence. "Then start by being honest with yourself," she advised gently. "I've made so many mistakes," he admitted, shaking his head. "With the business, with you." Before he could continue, Celia interjected softly. "I'm not here to rehash the past. I'm here because I believe you can still fix this, but you need to stop trying to do it all alone." Sebastian turned to face her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and raw fear. "I don't know if I can," he whispered, vulnerability evident in his tone. "You can," she insisted firmly. "You have to let go of the idea that asking for help is a sign of weakness. It's how you grow." Her words hung in the charged silence, and for the first time in a long while, Sebastian felt a small part of the heavy burden on his chest begin to lift. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. "Take it one step at a time," she replied, gently placing her hand on his, "and start by believing that you deserve a second chance." As their hands met, Sebastian's gaze fell to their entwined fingers, grounding him in a reality he had long denied. "Thank you," he whispered, his sincerity cutting through the quiet. In that moment, as the city lights flickered outside, Sebastian realized that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning from it and building something better together. With Celia's unwavering faith in him, he finally dared to believe that he could rise above his failures. Meanwhile, back at her home office in a sunlit corner of her private residence, Celia stood by large windows as the morning light spilled over her flourishing garden. The vibrant blooms, nurtured with care over the past year, were a testament to her own growth and resilience. Her phone buzzed on the desk behind her, a silent reminder of the connections she maintained. Though she had received numerous messages from Sebastian recently, she hesitated to reply, unsure of what to say. Each interaction with him now felt like a fragile balancing act. One misstep could topple everything she had painstakingly rebuilt. At last, a new message caught her eye. "I'll be at the cafe on 5th Avenue at noon. I don't expect anything, but I'd like to see you." Her heart pounded as she considered the invitation. Memories of countless nights spent alone while he chased elusive dreams flooded her mind. Yet she also recalled the man who had recently appeared at his apartment, vulnerable and willing to change. Though imperfect, he was trying, and that truth, however painful, ignited a spark of cautious hope in her. After a moment's contemplation, she responded with a simple, "I'll be there." The quaint cafe, nestled between towering brick buildings, exuded rustic charm with its aroma of freshly baked pastries and roasted coffee. The soft murmur of conversations provided a soothing backdrop as Celia stepped inside. Her eyes immediately fell upon Sebastian, who sat alone at a corner table near the window. His open notebook and untouched cup of coffee spoke of anxious anticipation. When he saw her approaching, his expression shifted from uncertainty to relief. "You came," he said, rising to greet her. "I did," she replied softly, a small smile playing on her lips as she took a seat across from him. Their conversation began hesitantly, the delicate dance of old wounds and tentative forgiveness unfolding between them. Sebastian's voice trembled as he spoke. "It's worth the risk." Celia's eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly, trying to steady the tumultuous emotions surging within her. "It's not that simple," she said, her voice caught somewhere between hurt and hope. "It's not," Sebastian replied with a small, rueful chuckle, "but nothing worth having ever is." For a few long moments they sat in silence, the only sound the quiet hum of the city outside mingling with the distant rustle of leaves. Sebastian's hand rested warmly on hers, a silent vow that his promises were more than empty words. Yet, as the minutes passed, Celia slowly withdrew his hand, needing space to process the whirlwind of feelings inside her. "I need one more thing from you," she said, lifting her eyes to meet his, steady and searching. "Anything," he answered immediately, his voice soft with vulnerability. "I need you to be okay with the fact that I'm not the same woman you left behind," she continued, her voice firm yet tinged with sorrow. "I've built something for myself and I'm proud of it. I won't give that up for anyone, not even you." A genuine smile tugged at the corners of Sebastian's mouth. "I wouldn't want you to," he said, his tone full of admiration. "That's what I love about you, Celia. You're stronger now, and that strength is what makes us different this time." Her breath caught at his words, and she turned away for a moment, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. When she looked back, she saw in him the man who had battled through his own trials, one who had faced failure and emerged humbled, yet desperate to reclaim what he had lost. He wasn't perfect, and neither was she, but perhaps that was exactly the point. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely trusting itself. "I'm willing to try." Relief washed over Sebastian's face, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, his smile was genuine, a beacon of hope in a long, dark night. "Thank you," he said softly, his gratitude palpable in every syllable. But this doesn't mean everything is fixed," Celia quickly added, her tone measured. "We have a lot of work to do." "I know," Sebastian replied, determination seeping into his voice, "and I'm ready for it." They finished their coffee, and as the conversation gradually shifted to lighter topics, the tension between them eased. By the time they stepped out of the cafe, the air around them was filled with a tentative, yet unmistakable sense of optimism. Walking side by side down the bustling street, amidst the chatter of passers-by and the hum of city life, Celia felt that this was not the end of their journey, it was merely the beginning of something new. Later, as twilight descended over the newly renamed Briarwood Gardens, Celia found herself standing alone on the stone pathway. The soft glow of the fading sun painted the garden in hues of amber and violet, highlighting the blooming flowers she had so lovingly nurtured over the past year. The scent of lavender and jasmine drifted through the air, carried by a gentle breeze that seemed to whisper promises of renewal and possibility. This garden had become her sanctuary, a place where, in her darkest hours, she had found solace and strength. Her hands rested lightly on the wooden railing of the garden's pergola, a spot where she had spent countless nights lost in thought, reflecting on the life she once shared with Sebastian. There was a time when this very place had been the scene of heartache, a silent witness to the tears she had shed, questioning why she was never enough for him. But tonight, as the garden swayed softly in the cool evening air, there were no tears, only the quiet hum of possibility. The sound of footsteps behind her broke the reverie, and she turned to see Sebastian approaching. Gone was his usual suit and tie. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a gray sweater, and a subtle hint of stubble softened his features. There was a calmness about him now, a grounded presence that resonated with the new man he had become. Reaching her, he smiled, a small, tentative gesture, as if testing the waters of forgiveness. "You found me," she said softly, though her tone was playful, acknowledging that he hadn't hidden as much as he once might have. "You weren't exactly hiding," Sebastian replied, leaning casually against the railing beside her. They stood in silence for a moment, the evening sounds of chirping crickets and rustling leaves filling the space between them. Glancing at the garden, Sebastian's brow furrowed as he recalled the past. "I remember when you first started working on this garden," he said gently. "I never understood why you were so dedicated to it." Celia smiled faintly. "That's because back then, you didn't understand what it felt like to need something of your own." Sebastian nodded, accepting her words without protest. "I do now," he admitted quietly. For a long while they let the silence stretch between them, filled with memories and unspoken promises. Then, with a steadying breath, Sebastian broke the quiet. "I know tonight is important," he said, his voice laced with sincerity. "It's a turning point for us, isn't it?" Celia exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around the wooden railing as she considered his words. "It could be," she admitted hesitantly, "or it could be the end." The weight of her admission hung in the air as Sebastian shifted, turning to face her fully. "I don't want it to be the end, Celia," he declared firmly. "I'm here because I believe we can build something new, something better." She lowered her gaze to her trembling hands, thoughts swirling like the autumn wind that brushed past them. "It's not that simple," she said, her voice barely audible. "I've worked so hard to get to where I am, to be independent, to build a life that doesn't depend on anyone. And I don't want to lose that for you." Sebastian's eyes softened as he stepped closer. "I want to be part of that life, not overshadow it," he said, his tone earnest. "I'm afraid," he admitted, "that we might fall back into old patterns, that I might somehow take away the woman you've become." "You won't," he continued, his conviction ringing clear in the twilight. "Because I promise you, I won't let you, and more importantly, you won't let yourself." For a moment, the sincerity in his voice cracked through her defenses, and Celia allowed herself to consider the possibility that perhaps he was right. In that quiet, vulnerable space, she whispered, "What if it isn't enough?" "It is enough," he replied softly, closing the gap between them. "Because this time, we're both different. We've both learned what we need, and we've both fought to become better versions of ourselves." Celia searched his eyes, looking for any sign of doubt, but all she saw was a raw honesty that resonated with her own inner truth. Her heart ached under the weight of the decision, yet beneath the fear, a spark of hope glowed, an ember that had been long dormant. "Do you remember the last time we stood in this garden together?" she asked suddenly, her voice trembling with nostalgia. Sebastian nodded. "You were planting the lavender," he recalled softly. "I didn't stay long then." Celia's smile was tinged with bittersweet emotion. "No, you didn't," she said quietly. "I stayed for hours afterward, wondering if you'd ever come back." "I wish I had come back sooner," he confessed, regret thick in his tone. "But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving." Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, a soft laugh escaping her lips as she tried to mask the emotion. "I hate that you can still make me cry," she said, half joking. "It's not my intention," he replied gently, his hand reaching out to squeeze hers reassuringly. They stood together in that garden as the sun dipped below the horizon, the amber twilight wrapping them in its gentle embrace. "We have a lot of work to do," Celia murmured against his chest, acknowledging that their journey would be fraught with challenges. "I know," he whispered back, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. "But we'll get there, one step at a time." The garden swayed softly in the evening breeze, echoing the promise of renewal. This was not the ending of their story, it was the beginning of a new chapter, built on honesty, resilience, and a love that was ready to be reborn from the ashes of their past mistakes. And that was the story of Celia and Sebastian. A journey not just about love, but about growth, forgiveness, and the courage to start over. Sometimes the deepest wounds take the longest to heal, and yet it's often through honesty and vulnerability that we find the strength to rebuild. Not everyone who leaves comes back, and not everyone who returns deserves a second chance. But what if they've truly changed? Would you dare to let them in again? What about you? If you were in Celia's place, would you give Sebastian a second chance? Or would you walk away and never look back? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another heartfelt story. Thank you for staying with me until the very end.